But at the same time, I'm going to make this very clear.
I've been waiting for a long time, waiting all week.
But we all have Valdosta State ties, which is the reason why we decided to get this podcast a try.
Cairo, yeah.
Cairo, yes.
We all say that.
New Jersey?
This is title town. We win championships.
Be fire in my loins.
That'll be later on in the podcast, folks.
I can't wait.
He made a promise to God. He said,
You allowed 28 points against a team that was essentially playing like a lucky person playing Madden, going for 2 after every touchdown.
and I think God has given him his end of the bargain.
The gigantic metaphorical middle finger.
The dirty Myrtle is exactly how it sounds.
And this is the Inferno Blazer Sports Show. It's a new day in Titletown, and thus we provide a new episode of the Inferno Blazer Sports Show. This is going fantastic, ladies and gentlemen. This is our second time having to record this because
Gosh, here's this new guy that's starting us off. Gosh.
Oh man,
he's doing
it's good to see everybody back from fall break. We're still on the jitters, man, but let's not waste any time, unlike the Cowboys did on Sunday Night Football. But that's a conversation for another day.
What is that, folks? It went 15 seconds before he brought it up.
Not even
15 seconds was as long as the Cowboys had a lead, and
They didn't have a lead, so you can't even say that safely.
So you're making his case for him, is what I'm hearing.
yeah.
I mean, how else can I
They
say
ain't got a case other than Dak Prescott being a fraud. But let's get into this, man. We were talking, Blazer sports, and, that's what we do here best. So, Jack, what you got for us first?
Well, first, shout out to VSU Volleyball. They took a 2-0 trip up to Tennessee this week, and let's see, they beat Christian Brothers 3-1, and they swept Union 3-0. And they're doing really well right now. They're currently 13-6 on the season. And when it comes to playing at home and even on the road, some in conference, they seem like they have a really good chance to contend for the conference championship this year. And currently they sit 4th in the conference behind West Florida, Alabama, Huntsville, and coincidentally, their opponent this Friday night, Mississippi College. The Choctaws are coming to the complex, and I will be on the call for that game. I'm sure some of us here will be working that game with me, but I'm looking forward to see what they can do, because they've also got a game following on Saturday afternoon against West Alabama, looking to get to wins 14 and 15 respectively. I'm curious to see how it's going. They are in a much better position than they were last year. They keep getting better. Everyone who was here last year got a little bit more experience and getting a little bit better. Mm-hmm. I think they have a chance to run the table.
I definitely think so too. This year, especially compared to last year we were really thinking about, well, they were gonna make the GSC tournament. It wasn't really so much a doubt of whether they were gonna make it or not. It was a matter of, were we gonna get the home match? Were we gonna host a GSC quarterfinals match? And now this year, with how strong the team's going, it's kind of more into the question of how high are we gonna be seated at this point if we continue this pace of play.
Right. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Honestly, it's a great improvement of seeing where the ladies have been in terms of last year and this year, and the growth that, the growth of where these ladies are in terms of their play. I am super excited to see what they can do now with, more time knowing each other, knowing the plays, knowing, their limits, knowing each other as a game like this, and especially when it is as grueling and as tough that really people don't really talk about in terms of volleyball, being able to have a great opportunity to see what they can do against the best of the best in GSC.
Yeah, and that's really the thing kind of Chris was alluding to, is just they played together more. They've got a little more playoff experience, a little more in-season experience too as well. I mean, volleyball is one of those sports that it is very team-oriented. It's maybe more team-oriented than some of the other big sports, just because they've got to have that togetherness to work together and to come back from a deficit or stay strong and put another team away. And that's really what I've seen this season, is the fact that even if they're down, even if they're far ahead, they're still going to play the same way. They're still going to be aggressive. And I think that's probably what's going to bring them further in the playoffs this year than it did last year, was their togetherness and, again, their experience.
I think something else to point out here is Coach Kaylee Zuha. When I'm calling the games, and Jack, you guys have probably seen this as well. Her substitutions when she brings in specific girls to play certain roles. She brings in Mackenzie Murray. That's usually when JoJo goes back to serve.
Right.
She brings Kaya Baker in. She's usually first to go back and serve, and she plays on that back line. The matchups and the alignments are very, very consistent. So I'd imagine obviously that's what they're going to be practicing the whole time, so they get that same uniform team chemistry
right
throughout a set, that they can stick with each other the whole way and bounce off each other's play.
Right. Well, on top of that, there's one thing I've been hearing a couple people point out. People like Mackenzie Murray, she's top 3 or 4 in just about every meaningful statistic for the team this year. And there's some people asking, why is she not starting? And I think it credits Zuha in her coaching game plan, in terms of she's got a girl on the bench that's good enough to be a starter. And whenever her starters get maybe a little bit tired or need a little bit of a break, they can send in someone who's just as good. And it's like a 6th man or 6th woman, if you rather.
Yeah.
It's like having a Swiss Army knife in there as well, because as soon as you take out some of the starters, you're thinking, oh, we might get a break if you're the opponent, and then you got someone just as good coming off the bench. It's part of what has made their season. It's what got them off to a good start here so far.
Yeah, it's that depth. It's that depth down the lineup. You have girls who they're starting on the bench, but they're producing at just a high rate, or an even higher rate.
Yeah, of course.
Starters.
I had a coach tell me one time, and I'll probably never forget it. Starting is great. Starting is important, but playing time is also equally important. If you could bring in those bench players and they're playing still at a high level, just never giving that team a break, that's really all that matters, is that you're running it down their throat. You're just punching them, going, and they never get a break. And that's what separates the good teams from the great teams.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'd have to agree on that one. Speaking of playing time, I know I never got any of that during football. I was awful. I was playing football. I was awful, even as a second string linebacker. So I wouldn't know a thing about that.
Well, Jalen, we're all sitting in a podcast booth and not playing college football, so I think we can all agree with that.
That is very true.
And I'm trying so hard not to make another Cowboys joke, but I'm gonna have to suffice.
But we got a timer going over here to see how long it is. You're sitting at 5 minutes right now, bud.
Prepare to break that streak. Speaking of football, let's talk about our VSU Blazers. And Kyle, we were at the game last week with Delta State, Battle of the Unbeatens.
Yeah, and so now I was in Moultrie, so you're going to have to catch me up to speed. What happened?
So, Battle of the Unbeatens, these two best teams in the GSC, two of the highest scoring offenses, and what we saw was a true beatdown, and to say the least, with Delta State.
It was rough.
And I wanted to ask more to Kyle, because we were both at this game, and we were sitting there and we were wondering, there was a tier of where VSU is and where VSU wants to be. And VSU is not where Delta State is right now. And Delta State really proved why they are one of the best teams in the GSC. And Kyle, go ahead.
All right. So, Jack, I'll explain it to you and I'll explain it to our listeners at home. So, basically, what happened was we go into this game, the 19th ranked team in the country. I believe it was our first or second week back in the top 25 since falling out last year. It was our one opportunity to solidify that Valdosta State is back and that we are back with a vengeance. And I believe I used that same wording in our last show.
Yeah, you did.
And they came up short. Delta State comes in the 8th ranked team in the country, one of the best high power offenses in Division II, and they hand us a loss 49-25. This is the same team that put 70 on us last season at Delta State. And I've always been one to say there's always something to do with the ride, and that's such a long ride to Delta State. But on the other hand, that's a long ride to Valdosta from Delta State. So
you're talking Cleveland, Mississippi.
Yeah, the fact that they came down here and put that kind of beat down on us it's kind of impressive. So basically, we are going to fall into 3rd place in the GSC right now, behind West Florida and of course Delta State. We essentially just lost the conference. Yeah. It's a long season. But I know Division II football. I know GSC football. They call it the SEC of Division II for a reason. We just lost the conference.
I think the biggest thing, though, is that going into this game, their quarterback, Patrick Shagong, only did not throw an interception all season. And not only that, but they were able to force 2 interceptions off of him in this game. Yeah. And the fact that that only resulted in 3 points off of those 2 turnovers is alarming. Yeah. And one of the biggest things also was that Sammy Edwards, who wasn't a turnover machine in this and especially where against last week where he had 6 touchdowns, only 1 interception. He didn't throw a single touchdown, but threw 3 interceptions.
Exactly.
He was forcing balls downfield that just were uncatchable. When you're throwing it into coverage, you're going to get burned every single time, and that's going to cost them.
And, you know, Chris, that's honestly what I thought about titling this little section in our podcast is turnovers, turnovers, turnovers. There was a total of 6 turnovers in this game, 3 by each team, 3 interceptions by the Blazers, 2 interceptions and 1 fumble by Delta State. And it's just what you do with them, really. Because they both had equal amount of turnovers, but Delta State capitalized on it, and they won the game because of it.
I would definitely have to agree with that, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Delta State, their zone, they played a good solid mix of zone and man coverage to the point where it kind of forced Valdosta State to kind of have to change their game plan a little bit because if you notice, I talked about it with Dave, one of our broadcast commentators, and I was talking with him, and we were both thinking that this is going to be an air it out, air raid, fireworks, bombastic, points everywhere all along the board, which ended up happening, obviously not in our way, obviously not in our favor, but I thought it was going to be more of an air show, that it was going to be a test of zone defenses, of long balls down the field. No, it turned into like an old-fashioned running game from both sides, and Delta State's defense really came up, especially where it was necessary, but not just to credit them, but Valdosta State. That second half, the play calling, I was getting flashbacks to last year. Not going to lie, especially with how, again, conservative they got. Instead of playing that kind of football that we talked about in the first episode that we kind of associate with VSU football, they reverted to a lot of short passes, short screen plays, bubble screens, trying to match Delta State's run game, even though their front 7 was eating that alive at times. It just turned into a rout the second half.
Yeah.
Well, Jalen, you know, I didn't go to any of the 2022 VSU football games, and really, I thought about this when I was actually working this game. You know, I was just looking around the stadium, and I realized that this was the first time that I had ever been in Bazemore-Hyder Stadium where we lost. We obviously, back when I was working for VSU football as video coordinator back in 2021, we go undefeated at home and then obviously lose in the national championship. But we had not lost a game at home, and that's another big thing. And that's honestly what I consider my stat of the day, is that since joining the VSU Blazers, Coach Jackson has a 5-5 record at home, sitting right at 500. And that's kind of concerning, especially since, like I said, this is Titletown. You win football games or you go home. And that's really the thing, that this is in front of our fans, this is in front of our people, and we're just not producing right now compared to the old coaching staff. And, you know, I really don't like to compare the past because the past is the past and we can't do anything about it. But in the Gary Goff era, we were 14-1 at home, and that only loss was to West Florida in the second round of the 2019 playoffs.
And I get that. I definitely understand what you're saying with the this is Titletown. You win football games or you get out of town. But also at the same time, I also kind of will look at it from this perspective, kind of the glass half full perspective of, it is one game. Yeah. Yes, it is a extremely tough match that realistically, you look at that game on paper, should have been a lot closer than what the finals were going to be. And Delta State, of course, being pretty much at the peak of their game. We got Mississippi College coming up this Saturday. We got Shorter for homecoming coming up the next week at Bazemore-Hyder Stadium. this is an opportunity for VSU football to bounce back.
Of course.
Yeah,
And
but here's
I'll give them that. I will give them that. This was a very good matchup. It was two very good teams, and at the end of the day, one team is always going to lose. And I think it's a quality loss. I know they talk about in Division I, quality losses considered with the college football playoff, and they always say no loss is ever quality. A loss is a loss, but at the end of the day, we lost to the 8th ranked team in the country, and there really isn't much to be ashamed about that. Obviously, you want to win every game, but
this game was winnable in my eyes. I mean, Sammy Edwards was, when you're forcing passes like that, as I alluded to earlier, these were, I mean, at one point they were up 21 to I believe 17 going into half, but then an interception not only flips the game around, where I believe it's either 2 interceptions, and they flip the game around, and now it's 28-17 going into the break. 14-17 going into the half, and then the 2 touchdowns by Delta State after the 2 interceptions going into the half completely flipped that game around, and they never let that go.
Well, the big thing was that they scored at the end of the half, and then they get the ball back.
And then they start the second half, and they score again. And I think and speaking of like the defense, and when you're putting the defense in rough spots, they're gonna break at some point. But speaking of rough spots, because you mentioned Mississippi College is the next on the docket, and I remember this game quite well because me and Jalen were both working camera that game. We were astonished at the fact that Mississippi College and the Choctaws had 540 yards rushing in that game. All of their touchdowns came on the ground. VSU's offense played well. We have about 600 yards worth of offense. 600 yards worth of offense and in a game, and you score 40 points on, I believe, 11 drives. You do some, you're wondering, how did you lose? Because your defense, when you're putting them in bad spots or where you can't get a stop, that's like the biggest thing. And for VSU, especially when you're going up against stiffer competition, especially in the GSC, their defense needs to clamp up. Because against Chowan 2 weeks ago, Chowan, they
get it
were.
Right, Chris.
Yeah, I know. I should get it right, considering they're in North Carolina, even though they're like in Virginia, but they don't count. But they are. That defense has been looking quite mortal in the last couple of weeks. Because against Chowan, they were down. They were only up by 2, 31-29, and then they were able to close it out by only 7 points in the second half. But the defense needs a bounce back game, and badly.
And looking ahead, so we're looking at 5-1 on the season, traveling to Mississippi College this week. They're 2-3 on the season. We lost 49-40 last year. I'll start with Jack, and we'll go around the table. What do y'all think the Blazers need to do differently this week than they did last year and they did last week against Delta State?
Well, last year I'm not really concerned about because there was a lot of turnover from the team that was here last year. I don't know the exact numbers, but I do know that
33 seniors left.
33 seniors left. Okay, well, that's especially with all that experience. It's practically a different team, so I'm not worried about last year. The big thing from what I see is they just need to stay true to how they play, and they need to limit the amount of turnovers because, like Chris alluded to earlier, Sammy Edwards has not been a turnover machine, but whenever you're playing a tough conference opponent, especially when you're on the road, you can't have mistakes like that. You got to play a good, clean game. I believe they have a shot. I believe they have a shot to win. They just got to stay true, limit turnovers, have a good team game.
Honestly, I'm gonna have to agree with you there. There's really nothing that you said I wouldn't already repeat. They just got to stay true to what they've already established in these first 5 games. Of this is VSU football. This is how we're gonna come at you. This is the offensive plan we're gonna go with, and we're going to make defenses fear that. So pretty much everything Jack said, I can agree with that one. Chris, you can go right ahead.
I was gonna discuss with you all, as I cannot believe that we are in basketball season, guys.
Yes, sir.
They're getting a little bit nippy. We are. football
I actually
season.
have something to say on that when you get done.
Yeah, we are hitting the weather getting a little bit nippy, and I don't understand why I was in Tallahassee and it was 54 degrees outside. But
that
that's
sounds
conversation
fantastic.
for another. Yeah, I
It's
know.
time for
Like,
the colder weather
I'm
to
so
be
sorry.
back.
That's just as awful. But we are entering the basketball season, and the Lady Blazers have 4 very brand new players in J.C. Justice, Jalen Townsend, Victoria Isaac. I'm not even going to try to pronounce her name today, and Taisha Reed. We are welcoming them in, and a lot of 3 out of these 4 ladies are coming from Division One. And coming from Division One, I mean, they didn't get a lot of like playing time over the last, in their last couple of seasons. But they are looking for an opportunity.
But they're a D1 athlete, though.
Yeah.
I mean, that's still
huge, especially
big.
coming down for Division Two. But I will say this though, it's a great chance for them to really show what they can do at this level. I'm definitely excited to see what all these ladies do. But Victoria is also like Lily Long, who's her senior this year, coming from Melbourne, Australia.
Good day, mate.
So they got a lot of time.
We have another Aussie in Valdosta State.
Aussie. But I am definitely excited about that Lady Blazers. 22-7 last year. We didn't perform as well as we wanted to, especially in the GSC.
But hey, still, they were in the Elite Eight 2 seasons ago. I mean, they're still
that
a very
is true.
good team.
But there's no moral victories, and they would love to get another banner back at the complex, and we would love to get some.
Oh, we'd love to hang one.
Yes,
and I will say to the fans out there, guys, don't just come to the men's games. The women's games.
Oh man, they are amazing.
They are extremely
tough. They are tough, and for me, they're more entertaining than the men's games just because of the level of competitiveness and how they play as a team together. I would say even more than the men's team. And you're missing a really good game if you just show up for the men's. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, and with that also being said, you get 2 games in one night. Also, Jack just looking over at Kyle, and you guys can't see it, but Jack, what was that face about?
Nothing. I'm lost in translation right now.
I was gonna say that there's something.
There's something going on. I was just thinking about that's an off-camera conversation for sure. But
go ahead.
No, I just surprised. I'm just surprised. I'm not going to incriminate anyone on this
Jack,
podcast.
I know what you're talking about, and I am as surprised as you are.
Yeah, let's just go.
But
ahead.
I do want to mention as well that I want to send a congratulations to a former Blazer.
Who's that?
Cam Hamilton just got signed overseas over the last couple of weeks.
Oh, good for
and,
nice, good for Cam.
Yeah, just got signed overseas. I wish I had the team up, but my computer is having.
Wish he was still on this team.
Yeah, man. So I am super, super excited for him.
What's your name, man?
Yes, the best.
Oh, I love that.
Absolutely.
I love that.
But as we're kind of wrapping things up here, I wanted to go around the room in terms of college football and also a little bit of the NFL. Let's talk college football first. The biggest game in the last couple of weeks was the Red River rivalry between Oklahoma and Texas, aka, in my opinion, the best college football rivalry, I think. I think that we have right now.
Pause that false statement for a second. I also would like to point out that if you or any of your family members were watching Texas Oklahoma and asked yourself, who hit the remote? Why is half my screen cut off? ABC has come out and said there were technical difficulties on the field, because I know for a fact that I can confirm at least myself was yelled at by several grandparents for hitting the remote when I didn't even have it in my hands. So all they wanted to know was, why can I not see one side of the field?
Yeah.
So,
but I think that, that was another great chapter in,
it was,
in the
for
rivalry.
sure.
But if I have just the floor for just a moment, I'm so tired of when ESPN does these player swapping in different jerseys and acting like our eyes are not tortured by the sight of this. Seeing
what do you mean?
Vince Young, one of the greatest college football players, not only in Texas history, which is saying a lot, but maybe ever, one of the greatest ever.
Definitely one of the most entertaining to watch.
Yes,
sure.
absolutely. One of the greatest ever. And you flip him into a Oklahoma jersey. Just, oh, it's fun. But no, our eyes have to look at that. It doesn't look right. Kyler Murray, and even though he's from Texas, seeing him in a Longhorns jersey,
that
doesn't look
That's
right.
a curse.
That was not good.
That doesn't look good at all. And I
Also
just
been a
Listen. The only kind of connotation that should have Kyler Murray in Texas is, when the Cardinals beat the Cowboys a couple weeks ago. But I don't even think Kyler Murray didn't even play in that game, did he?
No, he didn't play in that game. He was injured. Thanks for twisting the knife.
Okay, just making sure.
Thanks for twisting
I was
the
trying to
knife.
figure out an excuse. I'm trying to help you here, okay?
Yeah.
If you sincerely think there's helping, if you think they're sincerely helping any of this, you're about as lost of a soul as me.
No.
Yeah, he is a Cowboy fan. He's a lost vessel. But
Hey, first step's admitting, right? That's all I'm saying.
I've admitted this for last 2 years.
Listen, man. He needs to get off the bandwagon. And speaking of the bandwagon, let's talk a little bit of the NFL. So some of the big headlines is that the Bears finally get their first win of the year. They finally utilize.
I heard Kyle had DJ Moore on his bench in fantasy this
I
past
had
week.
Justin Fields on my bench.
50 points on the bench.
As someone.
though. I still won.
First
First place in fantasy.
I still won.
Attaboy.
Yes, sir.
What's your team name, Kyle?
Next question.
Well, as someone
mine
that
is
was the
actually
smart one, the smartest one in the room, I had DJ Moore as a fantasy pickup in week 5.
Wait, as a pickup? Are you talking free agency?
Yeah, he was in the free agency bin in week 4, so I decided to give him an opportunity, put him in my lineup. I thought about taking him out the night, 20 minutes before the game started. I forgot to because I fell asleep. Boy, was I glad not to have done that, as he gave me a nice 49 piece as my team nearly won by 100. So no shameless flex, just like my Eagles, we're 5-0 on the year.
I beat my brother by 114 points.
You see what's the problem?
Was he starting the Cowboys entirely on his fantasy team?
Here's the thing, though. You see how a Cowboy fans always got to make it about them. Every single time. Every time.
Calling the kettle black from the Eagles fan, saying, we're 5-0. You want to tell me?
Ladies and gentlemen, if we had a cam right now, the looks on our faces tells the story better than it could ever. But going into a little bit of the NFL over the last couple of games, you're seeing Cooper Kupp finally come back from injury. We saw that Jonathan Taylor just signed his extension, so now that he's coming back. But also news before we even got onto air, as of today here on this Wednesday, is that Anthony Richardson, 4th overall pick, is going to be going on the IR. He's going to be out at least for the next 4 games. Also, Justin Jefferson is going to be going on the IR. So if you're a fantasy owner of Justin Jefferson, feel for you right now. But
the owners in shambles.
Yes, indeed. But looking at this season right now, who do you think is the biggest disappointment, and who has been the biggest surprise so far in this NFL season? I want to start off with the principal man. We're going to start with Jack Calhoun first.
In terms of fantasy, I wouldn't know, boys. I might be one of 3 people in America that does not play fantasy football. But
really, I'm sorry.
Fair point. It's not for everyone.
It's not that. I used to dominate fantasy football, but it would take all my time, and I'm just so busy nowadays. I don't have the time for it anymore.
Yeah, the superintendent meetings are getting to you. Huh?
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right. And speaking of which, I'd like to mention one more thing. Shout out some local area teams. Winnersville Classic was this past Friday night between Lowndes High and Valdosta High, and boy, I got to be honest.
There are going to be some very
there's multiple sides.
I don't know
of
if
this.
choice words is what I'm going to say.
Choice words. No.
Well, for reference, I had no problem with the game. For those of you that didn't watch, I was there covering the game, and the final score was 37-27. Valdosta retained the Winnersville Trophy once again, and whenever I cover stories for The Spectator, because I'm a sports editor, I normally have an earbud in so I can listen to the broadcast in case there's any like really cool stats. I can write them down on my notes.
Yeah.
I only have one note to make about the broadcast. I probably should not have listened to it. I listen. I'm not trying to call out a fellow commentator because I know the job. It comes with its difficulties, but I just want to let them know, whoever was calling the game, to please mute your mic when you're eating your chips, because it would be third down or something and I would hear someone munching on some tater chips, and I'm not gonna lie to you, it got to the point I almost pulled out.
What do you mean by
the earbud, because I couldn't listen to it anymore. I mean, it was difficult, but you guys are a bunch of children, you know that. I am surrounded by children, ladies and gentlemen.
Here's the issue.
That's kind of my fault.
Listen, first of all, we are college students. We are just children in bigger bodies. Please. So first of all, thank you for that. As you know, first of all, no one should be eating chips live on air. And out of all the things you could be eating on air, really chips? I hope they were like barbecue.
Another thing, they stated that they were commentating in favor of Valdosta High, but every time the Wildcats would get a first down, consistently, all I'd hear was this. My mic went dead there for a second. I would hear someone bang on the table, and every time the Lions would get a first down or a big play, I'd hear it like twice. Like, mic keeps cutting out here.
Get it right, principal. Come on.
All
now.
I'm saying is I'm proud of the work that we do at Blazer Sports Media, and I know that we're going to go far because, I mean, we probably could have put on that telecast on Friday.
That's the thing. I can watch ESPN Plus broadcasts of like baseball. I'm not trying to knock anybody because, listen, I understand we're all out here trying to make money, trying to pay rent. But my God, I have no doubt we are all going to be successful in this room, because if these people are working for ESPN, then we're going to be all right, folks.
Yeah, but I do want to ask you guys this, because, I did ask it earlier, but I do want to get some answers from you guys. Who do you think is the biggest disappointment in terms of teams this year, NFL-wise, as we kind of wrap things up? NFL-wise so far this year.
Oh, the biggest disappointment.
Biggest disappointment and biggest
Besides
surprise.
The Cowboys, you mean?
Oh, my God.
Here's the thing, though. 3-2 isn't the worst thing in the world, though. The nature of those two losses that they have are bad.
I ain't gonna lie to y'all. I thought the Broncos would be better than they were.
Broncos country.
I didn't.
Yeah, to sit here at 1-4 is
They are legitimate tank bowl contenders right now.
at least they have their pick this year. I don't. Wait, no, they don't.
No, they don't, because they traded that. First
Yeah,
round pick for Sean Payton. They not only traded that for Russell. They traded that for Russell Wilson, but I think they also traded some other assets to get their coach.
Broncos
Yeah,
country.
stuff. When you losing to Nathaniel Hackett as the offensive coordinator,
Also, bring the receipts. I got to be honest. I'm a Saints fan, so there's always a place in my heart for Sean Payton, but he messed up when he was calling out Hackett. And I'm not going to lie to you. I wanted the Jets to win that game so bad just because I wanted to see Hackett beat Peyton, and that's what happened. So, Peyton probably should have stayed retired. But
I mean, there's been a constant trend though, and I want to get to your, most disappointing team though, Jack. But in terms of some of the best coaches of the 2010s, Tomlin, Belichick, Peyton, and Carroll, all of them have had franchise QBs at one point, and only one of them not only has a winning record, but is also in a decent position in terms of quarterback wise. Tomlin, you can maybe say is okay with Kenny Pickett, but then again, his offensive coordinator is Matt
coordinator doesn't know.
I mean, yeah, but it's kind of been a bit of a dip from Ben Roethlisberger. But then you also have Belichick with Mac Jones, and although he just came out maybe 25 minutes ago and said that he's not going to be benching Mac Jones after his game against the Saints last week. They have not been right since Tom Brady has left them. They have not been right at all. It has truly been awful. And when I've never seen it in my lifetime of seeing Belichick's teams only having 3 points in their last 2 games. They only had 3 against the Cowboys, and they had and
something
they were
tells me
shut
that wasn't
out.
a mistake.
Yeah,
there.
but and a shutout with the Saints, and I just really am concerned with that as well. And then you look at Sean Payton, who has been out of the NFL a year, but Russell Wilson isn't a bad quarterback, and Russell Wilson hasn't been terrible this year either.
He's making his case to be pretty bad right now. I'm not gonna lie.
But but it's just super disappointing to see some of these great coaches, and the questions really does linger of how much really stock that these all-time QBs that they have had in their history really affected their legacy. The only one that hasn't, that has only really benefited since their franchise quarterback has left is Carroll, and that is because Geno Smith has been playing absolutely well. And I know that Seattle was on a bye last week, but just they just transitioned really well from one team to the other. But what was your most disappointing team NFL wise so far this year?
In terms of disappointing, it's going to sound biased because it's a division rival. I'm a Saints fan, but I got to say the Panthers are a bit disappointing this year. I mean, obviously no one expected them to win the division, let alone more than about 4 or 5 games. But I've come to the conclusion now in watching professional sports that I truly don't understand how you can't win at least 3 to 4 games every single year, regardless of how good or bad your team is, considering especially it's any given Sunday when it comes to NFL rule. But the Panthers, they just can't seem to get out of their own way. And everyone's like, oh, well, Bryce Young's a rookie. He can't see over the line. And here's the thing. I don't want to hear any excuses for that because, there was times where Kyler Murray, his few good spurts, he could get around that. Drew Brees was barely 6 feet tall in cleats and a helmet, and he somehow found a way to do it. I just got to believe that there's Frank Wright is trying to right the ship. I understand it's his first season, but I just got to believe that the Carolina Panthers are probably the most disappointing so far.
What about no bias here, but where do you sit, Jalen, in terms of the most disappointing team?
Honestly, my most disappointing team. This is gonna sound a little bit a little confusing, a little jarring, considering a player from this team dropped 55 points, 55 fantasy points, and it's the Bengals. In my opinion, I think that title so far, I'm gonna have to give it to Cincinnati, and I think it mostly spurs from how they're handling Joe Burrow's injury right now, because considering they still have not figured out a backup quarterback situation, so they're still playing Burrow out there week after week on a injured calf. That's only that if sports injuries, the more you keep playing on it, the worse and worse it's going to get.
Yeah, just as Baker Mayfield, how that worked out for him.
If the Bengals don't figure it out, and when Burrow's not on top of his game, the entire offense is falling down the drain. And it also doesn't help that the defense isn't holding up their end of the bargain as well. Yeah. So I would say so far, until they figure out what to do with Burrow, the Bengals are probably going down as my vote as most disappointing.
I do think that, honestly, in terms of disappointments this year, I don't want to be harsh and say the Jets because the nature of why they're only 2-3 is not all on them because of they are, they have the unique injury of Rodgers being down after 4 plays, like cheese.
Yeah, that's right.
But I do want to put a team that is on the spotlight, and no, it is not the Cowboys.
Are you sure about that?
Are you sure about
maybe.
that?
I am going to hand that bestow to an NFC South. I would say a South rival because I was going to say the Falcons because I expected more out of Ritter because I just don't trust them.
Why? Why did you expect more out of him?
I didn't.
But I'm
Saints
gonna,
and Falcons
but I'm not
fans
gonna lie
talking
to
why
you.
here,
I'm gonna say the Giants because I think the Giants, I didn't expect them to be a Super Bowl contender this year, but I expect them to at least make the playoffs and be a consistent play. When you get a tight end like Darren Waller, you have Saquon, who's a top 10 to top 5 rusher in the NFL.
He's not injured.
Yes, but you also have
injured.
linemen who are blocking their own linemen, leading to turnovers. You
Yeah,
saw
that's
that on
true.
Monday night.
And Daniel Jones.
I mean, I haven't seen a lineman block his own lineman since University of Florida a few years ago. I mean,
I
come
remember
on.
that game.
That was a Georgia Southern game y'all lost, wasn't it?
Oh, my
Yes.
God. But, I mean, don't get me wrong. The other disappointment team is them Dallas Cowboys. I mean, don't get me wrong. 3-2 looks good for any team, but 3-2 for the Cowboys is so disappointing. Because you could legitimately be 4-1. Legitimately, because you don't lose to a team like Arizona. Because Arizona, don't get me wrong, has had some fight this year, and I do like what Joshua Dobbs is doing and getting himself an opportunity to play more in the NFL, and I'm excited for him. However, my word, that 49ers loss, that told me a lot about that team.
No one expected Dallas to win, but we weren't expecting it to be 32 points.
I wasn't expecting it to be 49-10. And honestly, I
don't think it was 49-10.
Yeah, 42-42.
Or was it 42-10? Okay, but
the Niners own you so much, you got them repeating the scores wrong.
He's just giving them another touchdown like their defense was.
Man, oof. I mean, George Kittle did have the right of a tire on after that touchdown.
Oh, whatever.
He had a what?
He had the...
Yeah. But I'm just disappointed. Yeah, but
One
just
of those,
like
Duck Phallus shirts, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah. But it just was so incredibly disappointing to see them at 3-2 and to see Dak once again, nice human being, and I think it's a very good quarterback. But my lord, can he play well in a big game? Like, good grief, man. But, being 3-2 is okay, but you're not 5-0. And that is the difference between you and me. Let's wrap things up. I'm not going to say anything more controversial about Jerry Jones this week.
Oh, my goodness.
We
already did that 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I know. But thank you so much for watching us, man. For Jack Calhoun, Kyle Hawthorne, and, of course, Jalen, Cowboy, Cowgirl fans. I'm Chris Mercer. We missed you. We bid you a farewell, goodbye, and go Blazers. Bye, Felicia.